And here we are, another episode of Translation Confidential. And this is episode 124, and this is 2025 predictions. So, as you know, typically around this time of year, we do a little prediction episode to see if we can look into it. We said we were going to go back. We need to go collect what we did in the previous ones and see how off of our rocker we
Yeah,
were.
let's give ourselves some grades.
Yes, exactly. But let's get rolling into this year, Patrick. So why don't you get us rolling? What have you got? What's one of the big things you think is going to happen in 2025?
Yeah, my first one is that I think we'll see a big uptick in M&A. I think that took probably a slight break the last couple of years, but I think just kind of with the global economic situation evolving as it is, I think we're going to see a lot, just not only in the translation industry, but all industries. I think M&A, mergers and acquisition, will pick up. And I see that especially in the translation and language services space. I think we'll see maybe some of those big behemoths that we all know and may not necessarily love look to scoop up some of the smaller boutique companies. I think we'll also probably see kind of the middle of the market consolidating too, where other mid-market companies might be looking to acquire other mid-market companies to maybe chip away at those behemoths.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, speaking just from our own perspective, I know we're on the hunt again, and sort of our working theory is that because I know back when we started, next year will be the start of our 30th year in business, so that'll be in March. Um, there were agency owners that were a little bit older than I am, so I think a lot of those agency owners are looking to get out, especially driven by AI. I know we've had a few conversations ourselves with some targets that, where the agency owner's like, hey, it's been a great run, but I'm not that interested in tooling up for AI. And that's huge opportunities, I think, for companies that are looking to acquire some good customer lists and maybe some good talent. So I think you're right. I think we're going to see a lot of action though in mid cap going down. So I think it's going to be mid cap agencies looking to acquire smaller agencies, and maybe some of the firms that are kind of our size looking to grow. I know we have a very aggressive goal. We'd love to do 1 to 2 deals next year, or at least one deal a year for the next few years. So yeah, I definitely think that that's spot on. Speaking of AI, have you heard of AI or?
That's Apple Intelligence, right?
Yes, Apple Intelligence, correct. Yes, the
That's
new
marketing
update.
for you people. AI,
Yes,
Apple Intelligence. It's all there.
you know what? They probably just figured that out.
Yeah.
Well, as you know, obviously AI has been a hot topic. We certainly talked about it in a lot of our episodes this year. Um, but Patrick, you're saying that you're saying that maybe the way things are used are going to change a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think this again not only applies to the language services space, but just more broadly. Like, one, AI isn't going away, but two, I think people are starting to really grasp how important the quality check is, or the human in the loop. I know we hear that all the time, not only in the language services space, but I mean, I hear it at my marketing company as well. Like, there's got to be a human check on all of this. Like, you can't just blindly be like AI in, AI out. Like, it's going to not be a great output if you do that. So I think you'll see a lot of I'll call them AI enhanced workflows where AI is in the loop, but is not the loop. It's not the only thing that's going to be driving that workflow. And then another thing I think that's going to happen if they don't already exist is um, policies from like governing bodies, whether it's the American Translators Association, the EU, about how AI can and should be used in workflows, specifically when translating. I think there'll be a little bit of guardrails or rules put around usage rather than just saying, "Yep, it's out there and people use it."
Yeah, I think for me, I feel like I'm seeing sort of the peak of the hysteria. Again, that's in my opinion, and that was sort of accentuated by just being at the DevLearn conference. You basically saw that almost every single exhibitor that was there in the expo hall had some form of, hey, and by the way, we can translate everything instantly. And, I think there's going to be a lot more responsible use. I think that's a really good observation, Patrick. I think people are going to see that, okay, just because you can incorporate AI into every workflow, um, the real question is, should you? And if the answer is yes, how should you? And what checks are in place? Um, I think people are going to start using AI in the way that it was probably more intended. I don't believe it's a human replacement, but a human additive. It's an additive to the human workflow. And I think finally people may start to realize as well that, you know, uh, I don't think the only nature of AI is to just replace humans, right? I think the hysteria will tell you that that's exactly what it is. But I think it's a productivity tool. I mean, there's some great ads out there that I think hit it. One of the ones that I like is the Watson ad, the IBM Codex Watson ad, where it enables developers to work more efficiently, right? So it's not replacing the developer; it's assisting the developer.
Yeah, I'm thinking in my head right now too of like you'll see these big flashy demos from the AI companies of like, oh my gosh, look at what this tool can do. And I think that's a little bit of smoke and mirrors. What I'm thinking of is like the first airplane to come out looks vastly different from how airplanes look now and the function of them and how many passengers they bring and all of that stuff. So I think we're still at the beginning where the airplane might be, a guy basically on a bike flapping wings, for lack of a better analogy, versus now. I mean, we've been able to refine that technology over time, and now it, can bring hundreds of people thousands of miles away very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you kind of have to start small and put that proof of concept and like find good use cases. But I think eventually it could graduate to the point of maybe some of these more flashy demos and do some really cool stuff. But I think that's going to take a lot of time, energy, and brain power to get to that point.
Yeah, and of course, for TV it looks awesome, but what doesn't look great and you'll never see on TV is the one time out of 10 that it absolutely just dies and generates the dumbest answer of all time. So
Exactly.
I think that's people are starting to realize is that, hey, this is a great tool, but it has to be treated with respect. It has to be used in the right way. Otherwise, you potentially open yourself up to some huge levels of embarrassment. So, uh, that's right. So you had mentioned some policies. Yeah, I definitely think you're going to see a lot of organizations, whether it's governmental or professional or industry standards. I think that makes a lot of sense. In the show notes, you had mentioned increase in non-documented translation. So talk a little bit about that, Patrick. What were you thinking?
Yeah, I know. There's obviously when most people in the translation industry think translation, they think documents, so either Word doc, Excel, PowerPoint, whatever it might be. But I think that just how people consume content is changing. If not, I would say it has changed. So you'll see lots of whether it's like social posts, videos, subtitling, VO. I think so. I would call that like newer media type of translations. And obviously, we all hear the joke that print media is dead, but I think there's a little bit something to that of just people consume content in so many different ways now outside of just like a written document that the need for translation for all those different types of mediums that you might see is definitely going to increase.
Yeah, I think what'll happen out of the abilities of AI and the efficiencies added. People are worried about the translation industry shrinking. I think it's absolutely the opposite, Patrick. I think translation is going to expand like crazy. People are going to look at types of content that they never thought that they one could either translate efficiently or could afford in their budgets. And we've seen this a great deal. Clients that have been with us for over 20 years that are now saying, hey, this is a piece of content that we typically have never translated, but can we do this with some level of AI translation with checking with a human in the loop? Budget and timing are important, and we're starting to translate content that we've not looked at for some of these long-term clients and even new clients. I think I've told this story multiple times. We had a new client that never did a lick of translation, never did a thing, but they had 5 facilities around the world and decided at a minimum they were going to start subtitling their quarterly meeting, and the engagement's been amazing. And again, I've said it multiple times. I'll say it again, that in my mind, AI enhanced translation is a gateway drug for new clients that have never done translation. They get that little bit of engagement and say, oh my goodness, look at what this small investment did. We get this level of engagement, and it's only going to lead to more translation, not less. Certainly, the activities are different. Maybe the top line revenue is a little bit different, but I do think that overall this is going to be a positive. So, I think we're going to get all sorts of folks. And you mentioned more on-demand tools as well, and I think that plays really well into the bullet that I had suggested, which is TAF, which is a brand new acronym. We love acronyms. Translation as a feature, and it's everywhere. I think I mentioned that at DevLearn, Patrick. It's everywhere. I'm curious, like in your world, are you seeing translation creeping up into all sorts of different tools and AI generated translation and AI tools?
Not as much translation, but more so on, I would say I see a lot more of transcription. Just like every meeting platform now has a button you click and it's like transcribe this live, and it can either scroll the subtitles right under or just spit out a file at the end and say, here's the transcript. Some tools do have kind of the layer added on top of like, okay, here's the transcript, and you can chuck it in Chat GPT and be like, what are the action items? Who said they're going to do what? And kind of pull that stuff, as opposed to reviewing all the notes. You just prompt for the things that you want to take away from that transcript. So I've seen a lot of that coming. But I mean, we can go back to the flashy demos of AI, right? Like that's one of the huge things. That's like you can speak one language into the microphone and it will spit out the other language, translate it into whatever language you want. And I know we've seen varying levels of success with those, just because again, like it is based on a machine translation engine, so that engine has to be really good for that tool to kind of work instantly, as opposed to having a human in the loop.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's just sort of this craze, building on the comment from DevLearn. There's just a craze that, hey, you have to have translation or it won't play, and you need to have it in the space, or you need to have some sort of AI angle. I mean, my gosh, that little star symbol, that's used for AI, it just creeps into everywhere, right? And it's absolutely insane, and it's going to continue. You will see it in the strangest of places. But again, I think there will be a sobering effect in 2025, and you'll start to see more focused use of it, uses that maybe make a little more sense. And I think in our industry, you'll start to see, more responsible use of it. The thing that I would love to see, Patrick, we didn't really mention it, or this could be a bonus one that we would add, is I think we're going to continue to see a lack of transparency among what I would call your B- to F+ users in translation. Or when I say users, I should say providers of translation services. They're going to sell AI enhanced translation as human translation, and nothing annoys me more.
Gonna get caught.
Gonna get caught. And I think there will be retribution from their clients. Obviously, they'll move away to those that are transparent. I mean, that's been one of the cornerstones of our company, is transparency. I mean, again, I love to bring up the fact that AI is not new to translation. Machine translation has been around from the 60s, and sooner, the idea of it, or older than that, I should say. But the difference is that the computing power is finally caught up. So now you can do things at scale and far more effectively than you used to, because it's a fair amount of computing power to get to what we're looking at. But I think that's going to be a huge thing.
Yeah, I would be interested to see how that plays out too. I know we've seen the stories of at least like AI checkers, at least in English. I know we talked about, I think, before the LinkedIn post where the guy was saying he ran the Declaration of Independence through an AI checker, and it said it was 95% AI, which is funny to me. Like, I think those tools I would take with a big caution. Like, if even like machine translation checker, I'm sure those types of tools exist, but I think without having like a native speaker being the person to be like, yeah, this doesn't sound right. I think if you're trying to do that as someone who doesn't speak the target language, like it's probably going to aggravate your language services company. If you're like, hey, I ran this through this tool and it like, I know we hear all the time with clients are like, oh, I ran this through Google and it says this, and we're like, well, do you speak the target language? Like we really need to press for those native speakers to be the one reviewing it and giving feedback. It's not to say like you're not open to feedback. I think that's absolutely true that you are open to feedback, but I think getting feedback from someone who's qualified to give feedback is going to be very, very important.
No, absolutely, Patrick. I mean, we are open to feedback. I know most strong agencies welcome feedback. The idea of feedback being a gift is very much true, and whether it's positive or negative, it needs to be addressed. And I think I think that you're right. That's going to be a big stress is controlling quality and trying to figure out what's acceptable. And I mean I will tell you that most of our conversations with new clients specifically is about levels of service, and some of our power using clients that do the most types and uh, different sort of documents and services that they use from us, they're buying all up and down that stream of workflows, whether it's machine translation with a human editor all the way up to two humans, one translation, one is a translator, one is an editor, and proofreading, because they look at the risk of associated with each type of content, each type of service. How risky is it, and what level of risk am I willing to accept? I mean, that's really the key, and I think we're going to continue, unfortunately, to see a lack of transparency from the bottom feeders in translation. And yes, they're bottom feeders.
That's, I mean, hats off to that buyer who like recognizes the value though too. Like I feel like again, some people may not even know to ask the question like, who's going to work on this? And that's a very simple question that can tell you a lot about how that agency runs their projects. But like, I mean, if I were a client and asked you who's going to work on this, I think you can say, well, we have plenty of options for you. Which one do you want? And then we'll price it out, as opposed to just be like, here's the price, let's go, let's do this project, and you'll never hear from us again.
Absolutely, so important. I mean, one of our big development initiatives in the new year is to more efficiently show people the levels of service on a given project so they can compare, hey, here's what I'm getting for this level, here's what I'm not getting at this level, so they can more effectively make an important buyer's decision, right?
Yeah, I mean, think of I'm thinking of like all the streaming services, right? Like you can get ad free, you can get with ads, and you can get a bundle. And I'm picturing like that list of check marks. It's like, here's what you do get at this level, and here's what you don't get at this level. And like those check mark comparison lists are like so visually powerful to people to just be like, okay, at this level of subscription or project, you get this. And at the next level, you get these three things added on. The next level, you get these five things added on. So I'm picturing exactly what you're talking about there.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Last thing, Patrick, I know we touched upon this a little bit in one of the episodes, but I think it's not talked enough about this in our industry. But um, there's some value with translation memories, old, really strong human verified translation memories. Yes.
Yeah, this one I'm calling There's Always Money in the Memory. I think those translation memories or banks of past translations will become more and more valuable, especially if and when they're good and the client is happy with them. Because if you start at the memory level and then you kind of strap AI onto the top of that, you can get some pretty powerful outputs again with that memory training the engine, as opposed to kind of starting from scratch and just be like, AI, go do it. Obviously, if you're backing it up with the memory, that's going to be a lot more powerful than just kind of going in blind.
Absolutely. I think, the agencies that have been around a long time, like ours, are absolutely sitting on a gold mine. And I know when we're looking at acquisitions, it's one of the things that I'm talking about and, understanding is there a deep translation memory in a given sector or, a different type of service or, so that way we could potentially leverage that and create an engine of sorts for those clients, right? If how can we improve the relationships they already have? And I think one of the really, really interesting levers that we've been pulling for clients is, hey, your translation memory is massive. We've been doing work for you for so much time. How about if we build an AI engine for you so that if and when I say an AI engine, let's, again, AI gets thrown around a lot. It's using something like Azure Cognitive Services to um, to be trained. You can take that whole translation memory, which again has hundreds of thousands of segments that are translated by humans, and you basically teach the engine how to be smarter. So it's essentially machine translation with historical information, but uses AI to learn. It uses the artificial intelligence to learn.
And I know we talked about client feedback too. I think that's, if the agency is doing a good job, your client feedback is captured in the translation memory when they come with those notes or feedback. Then your memory is updated. Then your engine is updated. Like, it has such a powerful downstream effect as long as you have a good workflow in place to update your memory after you get that client feedback. So again, I can't stress enough how important both, like, one, good client feedback is, and then two, making sure that your agency is updating that memory to reflect that feedback.
And it is amazing because I think our lucky stars that we've been very, very diligent about maintaining translation memory and client preferences. Like all that hard work, I think pays off, and then the quality of the segments that you pull out for training. So that's a great point, Patrick. Um, I think this is that time of the episode where we talk about our biggest takeaway, Patrick. What do you think, out of all the topics we talked about, what do you think is going to be most important or number one for 2025?
I'll go with the non-documented translation point. I think you'll see a lot, like we said, a lot of different projects come through the door that may not have been done before. So just like, again, I think the door is open for a lot of different things to now be translated that might not have been possible in the past. So I think you'll see a lot of new types of projects come through the door, as opposed to like, hey, we just want this email translated. I think you'll see a lot of different types of things coming through the door.
Mm-hmm. For me, it's kind of a melange of a few of the points, right? Like I think a few of these things kind of mushed together, like the translation as a feature and the um, document types like you're talking about, or the project types like you're talking about, Patrick. I think translation buyers are going to continue to look for translation where they live. In other words, I think the days of, hey, here's my Word document, can you translate it? I think that's not where the big growth in the industry is going to happen. I think the big growth in the industry is going to happen when you make translation available to the users in their own environment. And I think of our SharePoint connector as one of the really big drivers, the Slack chat translation. That is providing translation where the users live. I think that's really going to be a big, big push in 2025. I think that's we definitely have to do that thing where we look back and see if we can do this next year.
All right, we'll schedule one for June.
Absolutely. So, all right, wonderful. Well, for this episode of Translation Confidential, this is Peter and Patrick signing off.